to the bridge of the space station, that is, because it's the space station edition of the Large Blast podcast. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined, as always, by Matt.
Where's my red gobbo squig plushie?
And Welshie.
Have you seen the architectural finesse of this building?
And we're here today to talk about all things Warhammer, but we like to get things started off with a thing that a lot of other Warhammer podcasts have stolen from us. That is Hobbies Goings On, where we take a little look at the goings on that's been happening in the hosts' lives. So, Welshie, do you want to go first? I feel like we start with Matt quite a lot, but do you want to give us a rundown of what you've been up to?
I've been painting loads of Tyranids, and it's been great. I've been painting all the Tyranids at the moment. I'm trapped indoors for various reasons, and I'm loving it. I've almost finished the Imperium box. I've sacked off the Screamer Killer because I didn't like it, but I've done the big Neuro Tyrant. You can see that on our Instagram. I did the new Death Leaper sculpt, which is the best of all of the latest Gene Stealer sculpts. Absolutely loved it.
Is he the guy who you posted recently on Instagram with the spotty foreskin or whatever it was he's got?
Yeah, he's got that like weird flesh skirt. So I decided to paint that. I tried to do like
really
chameleon
cool.
skin.
Yeah, that's good.
Because he used to have this rule called chameleonic skin, which literally meant he was really difficult to hit. So I wanted to kind of honor that. I've just been going nuts on the Tyranids, really. I've got Harris Specs I've just bought with some Christmas vouchers left over. That's the one that's like full hentai, with all of the like gribbly stuff coming out of its face.
That's cool.
Just doing
Are you gonna get the really big one? The one
I don't like it.
We were kind of underwhelmed by.
I don't like it. I'm not going to get it. What's he called?
Some sort of
Norn Emissary. I'm not going to get that. I just don't like it. It looks like everything's been thrown at it. I don't think it's a good model. I'll play my Dimachairon in place of it if need be.
Sounds like you've got enough Tyranids on the go as it is. Last thing you need is a massive one.
Yeah, it's not my cup of tea really. So I've gone. Perhaps just being trapped inside, I want to be consumed by some big wet tentacles. That's probably where I'm at now. I used to be a furry into the moist slabs.
Yeah.
Oh, well, fair enough. Good times. Matt, what about you? What have you been up to?
I've got a few new projects starting, but I was very inspired by the second episode of the Pariah Nexus on Warhammer Plus, which is the new Necrons versus everybody else in the Imperium. And
last week when you were lost to the walk, Matt, I had that in the news and I decided to pull it out because you weren't there to discuss it.
Right.
So it's bloody brilliant, isn't it?
It was really good. And I really enjoyed that they showed the Imperial civilians and children, which you don't really see in Warhammer at all. And I think the Imperial civilian is quite an interesting character that isn't really delved into that much, seeing as there are so many of them. Really good. And it was a salamander, so the well known for looking after the civilians, which he does in the video. It's really great, but that inspired me to paint salamander, so I've nearly finished a salamander, just a one-off. Picked up a Primaris Marine from my box of Primaris Marines and painted a salamander, which was a nice little palette cleanser. I feel every time I do this, I'm saying that I'm having a palette cleanser, but
got the cleanest damn palette.
I've actually just written this down in my notes. I can't remember when and how I found this out since the last episode that I was on, but something was really interesting that I found out was Jervis Johnson.
Jervis,
Jervis Johnson. Yeah, his dad was a famous actor called Richard Johnson, and he was the first choice, or one of the first choices, to play Bond rather than Sean Connery in the 60s. I was reading this like, what? This is mad. And
imagine if he'd got it and Sean Connery had opened up Games Workshop, it'd be like the flip universe.
That's kind of what I ththought. There's somewhere out there, there's a parallel universe.
There's like a dweeb Bond and a sexy Games Workshop guy.
I found that kind of weird. I don't know what kind of rabbit hole and how I found that out. I don't know, but you can see it's all on Wikipedia. It's all there for you to read. What about you, Stoney?
Well, I've been doing a few bits and pieces, which I'm hoping to, get out there quite soon. But I've also been messing around with. Do you remember I did that marbling stuff? I was talking to you about marbling.
Yeah.
Spray paint on water, and you guys were like, Stoney, your marbling technique is flawed. It disgusts me. I believe that's pretty much what you guys said.
Word for word, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, we did all agree that there's problems with it, with like the consistency and stuff like that, But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, I didn't want to give up on the idea. And as you guys know, I've done a bit of prop making in my time, and I remembered back on one thing that we used to do was like, if there's something that you want to make look like marble, you get these stencils and you spray paint it. Because it that way you can make like a piece of PVC tube look like a marble pillar, and it costs like 40 quid rather than like £4,000, that kind of thing. So I went on Amazon and I got one of those stencils, a marble stencil. And if you spray through the marble stencil onto the water, so you make a marble pattern on the water, and then you dunk it with like a better dunking technique where you kind of like put it on a stick and dunk it flat side first.
This is getting so in depth.
This is getting in depth. That's what I'm talking about. But it works really fucking well. It looks really fucking cool. So I'm back on the marbling game. You thought it was dead. You thought it was over. It's just begun, baby.
I actually the other day, one of the projects I'm just kind of fiddling around with at the moment is like a little bit of terrain, and there's some bits on it that I'd want to paint in marble, and I did look at it and think this bit of terrain could be really good for your dunking technique.
Now he knows my cool idea. He's trying to claw it back, trying to get his way back into my good man.
Boys, I don't know if you've seen
Let the record show that the run true marble king will be Stoney McStoney.
I don't know if you've seen it, but there's these stencils you can get online now.
Oh, god damn it.
It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard? 6 is now 4s.
It's the news.
Gene Stealer Limo's back.
News.
It's been a while. It's been a while since we talked about the old McFarlane style universe. Well, Joy Toy's back. They've made a 1/18 style version of Lionel Johnson. He vibrates. He's ribbed for your pleasure. He comes with 2 other little helpers and a sheath. What do you guys feel about this?
And they watch you in the dark.
God. Yeah.
This has got stupid now.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's ridiculous.
I've
seen
pictures of Gilliman. Has he been released yet? I don't know. But
sure.
There's so many. I can't believe how big the range is. I sometimes see people on Twitter with they brought out so many. I mean, they've done basically the full range in this 1/18 scale.
You can get an ATV as well.
Yeah, I know. It's mad. And the big tank, one of the little transport tank things. I mean, I think I saw people on the internet having a full-on like Warhammer game with
I've seen a
these
picture
figures.
of this. I think it was Kill Team they were playing with these.
Yes,
figures.
you're right. Kill Team, yeah, in the garden.
Yeah,
which sounds quite interesting. But they're still playing around with figure toys.
To be honest with you, this one is kind of the coolest one of the lot. It's kind of the one where if I was a kid, I could see myself playing with this more than the other ones. But at the same time, I'm not behind it. Like they must be super popular. People must be buying these because otherwise, why the fuck would they be making them? But I just be like,
we just off air have had a brief chat about Inquisitor and how we love those models because they were bigger. Are we saying there's a size cutoff? Is there a size that it becomes too nerdy?
It's the movement.
With toys?
It's not a statue. Then it's a toy, and I can't be doing it. I'm too old for toys. I need statues around my statuettes, figurines.
I don't know. I think the other day I saw a preview, or maybe it was a release, who knows, but of a Deathclaw Krieg, and they had some Cadians, and they seem to be going for loads of money on eBay because you can't get them anymore. But the stuff you do see on Instagram of people painting them, like painting a Space Marine and really, really going to town because it's such a big model, that I can appreciate. And I think maybe there's part of me that wants to do that to one of those.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I've thought
like painting it. Yeah,
I've got like a Raven Guard
embarrassed to post any Todd McFarlane toy I bought online. That shit's there forever, Like employers can see that.
You do it in secret.
Right?
Yeah,
but it's all right because when you explain what it is, you have to tell them it's your Joy toy. So
yeah. But no, this model is it's quite neat. God knows how much it is. I don't know. No
I don't
idea
know how
about
much
the
any of
pricing.
these are. I've never
No.
even looked at it.
It's got to be
Yeah.
like what, 60 quid? Don't know.
You are right. The challenge of painting just one Space Marine to represent your Legion is something I could kind of be down with, but collecting multiple ones just seems very strange.
To be fair, it might be quite a cool thing. You know, you could make a big piece of scenery out of it, like a big Space Marine. And
Big
obviously,
statue.
if you were going to marble it, if you're going to marble a big statue like that, then you might need some kind of marbling technique. Stop sucking your thumb at night, dweeb, because now you can hold tight a closer rubbery plushie. We've got a great unclean one. We've got a squig. We've got a goblin. We've got a cat from Warhammer for you to hug on whilst you're in bed. So, guys, Matt, I know that you have a wide collection of cuddly toys and into rubbing yourself against this kind of stuff. So, what are you into here?
Yeah, all of that's true. I was glad. I was glad when I saw this. I don't know why. But Games Workshop, I think unfortunately you missed a trick, because a year ago, whatever it was, when you brought this out before the squig and you had to recall them, I did genuinely want one. But I've just redecorated my hobby room. And my fucking God, I don't need anything else. I can never move house again. So I'm not going to get one of these. I kind of no. I've seen how much space the hobby room takes up when it's packed up, and I'm not getting one.
It's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah,
the squig. It was too much.
So, if you hadn't have had the product recall, I would have bought one. But alas.
But do you not want one to hug and kiss at night? Could you not live with you in the bedroom?
Yeah, I do really, but you can cut that out of the podcast.
What is that cat?
It's from Fantasy.
It's Grinks from Fantasy.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the Eldar Grinks, but it's not.
I'm gonna say
I think it's more. It's it's kind of like a griffin, like a magical griffin thing. So it's quite big.
Griffinks,
yeah,
I think it's called, rather than
people ride them.
Soon to be seeing a car boot sale near you.
Fuck off with these. Fuck off with these soft toy rubbish.
It's fucking landfill. You're just holding on to landfill for a couple of years.
This is a company that's
nonsense.
just been saying how great it is that you can bring your sprues back, so we can recycle the sprues and turn them into kids' playgrounds, because we're a company that's conscious about the environment, but we're also simultaneously going to mass produce a load of absolute bullshit, from plushies to free coins to key rings to fucking
Well, have you not heard their new
initiative?
initiative?
Have you not heard their new initiative? Can't do anything with.
Bring back every plushie. They'll stuff the stuffing in a dolphin and help it float better.
Utterly ridiculous. Companies need to look at themselves and go, we're just contributing to rubbish at this point. They're not even usable. They serve no function.
I do like them, but I absolutely agree. And Stoney, what you just said about the filling landfill, I did, for a split second, I thought, finally I can get one. And then I genuinely thought, no, what is the fucking point? Their point is so pointless.
It's all pointless. When you think about it, it's all pointless,
really.
It's all goddamn pointless, all the toys. What are we even doing this podcast for? Why?
Rolling in my 6-4.
Grand Design was a TV show about unique building projects that your mum and dad probably used to enjoy. The show served as both aspirational voyeurism for people wanting to build their own house, as well as scratching the reality TV itch of watching another person fail in their plans and have to live in a caravan in a pissing field for 3 years. In this episode of the Large Blast podcast, we rekindle the format of Grand Designs to take a look at some of the most amazing and spectacular feats of engineering throughout the Warhammer universe. So join us, listener, on a journey to find some of the universe's biggest and grandest designs.
They ply the depths of space, in some cases for tens of thousands of years. You know what they say about size. When it comes to ships, size definitely matters.
Yeah, so the Arc Mechanicus, being a naval fan, I wanted to talk about one of the most important type of vessels in the Imperium and one of the largest. Some of the largest ships, in fact, known to man. And these are the cruising ships of the Mechanicus that search endlessly across the stars in the Admech's quest for knowledge. So they go out into deep space. The extreme mass of these vessels on their own are so big they distort gravity. They have a distorted gravity field equal to that of an unstable moon. And they contain a hive's worth of manufactories, refineries, power plants, etc., including gene bays where they can create new slab servitors and Admech soldiery. The largest one, I didn't know this, but it's from some Black Library books. The largest one is called the Speranza Arch Mechanicus, I think is how it's called. It's the size of a continent, and it houses way more manufactura than the standard Arch Mechanicus do. I should say these ships are ancient, so they predate, a lot of them, I believe, the Imperium itself. So they go back to the Empire of Mars. They are the ships that went out into space to create the Forge Worlds themselves. And the Speranza, which is the largest one, supposedly, has an ancient machine spirit that is more advanced than the rest of its kind. And when tech priests engage with the machine spirits, they risk their own mind being consumed wholly by the ship. So it's kind of sounds a bit like the AI, if you listen to our AI episode. But these are giant vessels kept by the Mechanicus.
Is the machine spirit is it contained somewhere in these ships, or is it like felt throughout the ship? Is there a kind of central temple or something? Like, where do they feel the spirit? Because like machine spirit in a gun, it's just inside the gun, right? But when it's on this scale, is there any location?
That's a good question. I had no idea.
It's incorporeal, I suppose, in some sort of way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I imagined that there is like a core, but it is kind of everywhere. It is the ship.
Is it like hell? Is it in like a forbidden amulet, like in the engine room or some shit, like in a weird, like a tube, like a glass tube with like electricity in the middle or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
You thinking of Zordon or whatever his name is from Power Rangers?
Yeah, basically like Zordon. But with Jesus in it.
I think so, but I think it's no different to. It's just that because it's the Mechanicus, they're more intelligent than other stuff. But it's no different to like the Titans. But while I was looking at ships, I also came across another ship that I wanted to mention, which is the Gloriana class battleship. And these are an ancient and powerful battleship design used by the Legiones Astartes during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. And they are officially classified as battle barge, but they are much bigger. They're 20 kilometers in length. They are some of the largest standard warships built by man. The appearance varied greatly between them, so they're kind of subclasses rather than a particular one class of ship. Interestingly, the Black Templars have one. It's their flagship, which is called the Eternal Crusader, which is a perfect name. And they are the only second founding chapter to have had one, given to them by the Imperial Fists. Other Gloriana class vessels, which are perhaps more famous, are ships such as the Vengeful Spirit, is the Gloriana class battleship, pride of the Chaos fleets of Armageddon, and really second only to the Phalanx and the Furious Abyss class. These are the largest ships the Imperium can put to space.
The Phalanx is almost beyond shit. Fortress Monastery, they call it now. That they like the Rock as well.
Yeah.
Kind of. I suppose the Rock isn't all built though, is it? Some of it is rock.
Well, I mean, I've got some notes on the Phalanx, but the Rock I wanted to kind of have a discussion about, because you're right. Like at what point is it?
Well, it feels like the Rock is more a bit of debris from a planet rather than a space station in a way. It's like the only thing that remains from a blown up planet, right?
It wasn't sent into space purposefully.
So would you not say that a Space Hulk would count?
As what? As
like a giant man-made object. Man-made.
I think a Space Hulk would count as a man-made object.
So if the Rock, because I imagine the Dark Angels are built upon the Rock in subsequent 10,000 years, they've built and built and built onto the rock. They've probably had to rebuild stuff on the rock. So is it any different? Because they're...
Well, did a Space Hulk start out as a planet?
I think sometimes people say there may be like meteors and then other ships kind of fall into
the guy
gravity.
That went crazy putting extensions on like that. What was that city in Hong Kong that got? What was that?
Oh
place?
Yes, yeah, I can't remember
most
the name.
populated
Yeah,
place in the world, whatever it was.
35,000 people. Yeah, that's the right name. Yeah, Kowloon.
Insert text to speech section.
Kowloon.
Yeah, Kowloon City.
Kowloon.
Kowloon City.
Well, yeah, it's like that, but just on an asteroid. They never stopped it.
Yeah, I think you're right though, Matt. I don't think it counts. I think Space Hulks count because they're tethered together debris. So someone's got two bits of debris in space and they've tethered them together. Whereas I think building on some rock that happens to have been exploded into space.
Yeah.
I don't think that counts. I think
I
we've got to
agree.
exclude the rock from man-made structures in space.
Okay. Well, while we're on the ships, I just wanted to finish off with my last ship, which is the largest ship the Imperium has built, the largest class of ship. And I just mentioned it earlier, the Furious Abyss. And we mentioned this in an episode recently because it's a warship that was a massive starship constructed during the latter years of the Great Crusade. So the starship was created secretly by a branch of the Adeptus Mechanicus who held the loyalties to Horus during the Horus Heresy. It was built in secret in the shipyard moon of Thule. It was given as a gift to the Wordbearers Legion, who were serving their Primarch and getting ready to assault the Loyalist Legion. So it was kind of a gift to them. And after the commemoration ceremony, the shipyard and everyone who built the ship was destroyed. It sounds like
every single person that built the Phalanx was killed.
No, the Furious Abyss.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. These are the evil people. That's why they're blowing up. So they build the Furious Abyss, and then to keep it a secret, they are all destroyed. And this kind of reminds me of like the plot line of like a James Bond film, or one of those evil maniacs that builds his like mega weapon and then has to destroy everyone that's knows about it. So that
that's it. I mean, those death rays got to be built somehow. You never hear people talking about them. So
But it was given to the Wordbearers, but it was originally thought to be the sole ship of its class. But actually, Lorgar revealed there were two more massive vessels called the Trisagion and the Blessed Lady. And upon their completion, these three battleships were the largest and most powerful ships in the Imperium, rivaled only by the Phalanx itself, roughly shaped like a sword, with 3 points sticking out of the vessel like a trident. So imagine a absolutely enormous trident in ship. Floating cities. They had a prototype plasma lance, which is capable of destroying other ships in close combat, which sounds quite interesting. And it was
let's get into close combat with this enormous trident style shit.
That's what happens with Death Star. Basically, those planes get very close to the Death Star. So
it's true. If only it had a plasma lance to defend itself.
And they were also equipped with psychonic charges, which were able to be deployed within the warp, and they disrupted the senses of navigators. So navigators on ships trying to chase them through the warp, it would disrupt them. They would struggle to find where these ships were going. In the end, the Furious Abyss was destroyed above Macragge in the Horus Heresy, and I couldn't really see what happened to the other ships. So maybe they're out there still in 40k, which is why they're on my list of some of the largest ships in the Imperium, because they are still out there.
I'm down with digging in the crates and I'm MVP.
So next, we're traveling out to the beautiful countryside between star systems, and we're looking at some of the finest example of Wraithbone architecture, with smooth structural lines which draw the eye towards crystalline domes and semi-transparent divides. Everything you and your pointy-eared family would need to feel at home whilst exploring the vastness of space. This is the craft world of the Eldar.
Nice.
You guys bought me an Eldar codex because I'm ill and I'm stuck at home. And I've been reading it. And I can tell you, there's loads of bloody craft worlds. And actually, I quite like Eldar now.
Oh!
I'm a little bit converted.
Is there
It's
a
actually quite interesting, the Eldar lore, but I don't want to get distracted by all of it. I'm going to drop you some Eldar facts over the next few episodes. Don't you worry. But the craft worlds essentially look like your traditional spaceship, really. I think the Imperial spaceships have that Gothic square look, like floating cathedrals and churches, whereas the Eldar craft worlds, they look more like you'd imagine spaceships to look in kind of fantasy sci-fi films. They're kind of smooth, pointed arrowhead structures with multiple kind of increasing heights as you work from the front to the back. And they're just these massive vessels which entire populations of Eldar live on after they were forced to leave their homeworlds. So these are like Exodus ships, really. When the Eldar fell and their planets went to shit, they kind of got on these craft worlds, or they were already on these large craft worlds, picked up everyone else from the planets that they were originally on, saved them, and then made the craft worlds even bigger than they are now. But they're made like almost entirely of wraith bone. So their bone seeingers have been like melding this wraith bone into the shapes, which gives them that smooth, like traditional Eldar look. Within each of the ships, there's the different aspect warrior shrines. And I've been learning loads about aspect warriors, boys. So it turns out that they're all different things. The craft worlds are the things you've seen. I can tell you're glazing over already as I describe the wonderful new Eldar findings. This is all your fault.
I'm ready. I'm ready for some
You'll have heard of some
warriors.
craft worlds already. Alitok, Biel Tan, Saimhan, Altanzar, and Ulthway. Those are the ones that you see in the books, right? You've got Iandan yellow, the yellow dudes with the blue heads. You've got blue dudes with the yellow heads. You've got the red dudes. You've got the white dudes with the green heads. Yeah, those are all different craft worlds. Those colors represent different craft worlds. But within the craft worlds, you have different warrior shrines. And those different warrior shrines are things like howling banshees, things like striking scorpions, things like fire dragons.
So you can be a fire dragon or a striking scorpion from any craft world kind of thing.
Basically, that seems to be that's my understanding. And each of these craft world ships has each of those temples within it where you can train to be an aspect warrior for one of those specific styles of fighting within your craft world. So
does each craft world get a specific like boost as it is anyway? Like, you know, if you're like the white and green head guys, are you like better at running? And then
some of them seem to be more into certain things. I don't think they get a physical boost, but they're like maybe like a traditional boost that they've been doing something for a longer amount of time. So the Iandan, the yellow guys, tend to do more with the spirit stones and having the walkers that aren't actually manned. You know, they're like possessed by the spirits.
Okay.
And then
like dreadnoughts.
Like, Altanzar is the one that was ripped into the warp, which is where Morgan Ra and the Phoenix Lords come from. I think there's different styles. Samhain are the ones that ride the bikes.
Oh, they're red.
They're the red ones that have the like proper jet bikes. But even they would have shining spears, which are the white jet bikes. So there's the different temples within these giant ships. And within each ship is a webway. So these ships move at sub-light speed really slowly. Well, not really slowly, but comparatively slowly, rather than faster than light travel. But the reason the Eldar can get everywhere so quickly is that each of the craft worlds actually has a webway gate on it. When they launch the fleet from the docks on the craft world, the fleet can just go through the webway gate and appear wherever it needs to be out of another webway gate, including transfer between the craft worlds.
So they have fleets within them.
So these ships are so big that the entire kind of battle fleets are held within kind of harbors, if you like, of the craft world. The harbors release the fleet flies through a webway gate and ends up in wherever in space it needs to be, because these craft worlds are obviously kind of hidden in the middle of nowhere, away from stuff where they're not going to be detected.
They're like Norway, the Eldar, aren't they? Or like the stories you hear about Norway, where it's like, oh, their travel system, their trains are so good, or whatever, and that kind of thing. Like,
so they're like planet sized.
Yeah, I don't think they're quite planet sized, but they are massive because like so many Eldar died, and when you actually look into the lore, there's actually way less Eldar than I thought there were. So actually, you're talking, I think, tens of millions rather than multiple billions living
So-
on each of the craft world.
So it really is the webway that has allowed them to survive.
Yeah, and kind of be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
Um,
When you said about them being made of wraith bone,
yeah.
I had an image in my head of, it's the classic Grand Designs episode when Kevin McLeod turns up and the client's like, yeah, I'm going to use this new hasn't been tried before super 3D printed system to print my house from. And every time he comes back, the guy's got his
There's still a guy
head in
like
his hands.
singing
Yeah,
into a fire.
He's like the Wraith bone manufacturer in Switzerland has gone bust
Yes.
at the time
Yeah.
it's taken him to build his house.
Yeah.
Now he's got to try to make his own out of glue and sawdust.
Yeah, you know it's not going well where they actually the TV cameras go to the manufacturer in the episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So other things you might find on the craft world, in domes of the crystal seers. So this is where if you're like a really good seer,
Okay.
you become like a crystal version of yourself, and you can go and like interact with the previous crystal seers by like having a chat with their statue. So like the spirit stones are locked within the crystal seers, and you can go and like see all this massive hall of like crystal statues. They've got halls of forging, which are where they make the weapons. And then the thing that powers the whole thing, this is mental. Like, it's almost, when I'm reading all of this lore, because I didn't know any of this, it's almost like completely un-40k. It's like a different IP,
Okay.
like the way this stuff works within Eldar. I guess that's the point. But they're powered by a psychic power grid, which is generated by something called an infinity circuit, which is held in the Wraithbone core. So the infinity circuit is like spiraling energy generated by the dead spirits of all of the dead Eldar. So when an Eldar dies, its spirit goes into the Waystone. So those little jewels that they carry, there's an empty Waystone. When they die, their spirit gets captured by the Waystone, which becomes a spirit stone. Then someone picks up the spirit stone and delivers their like ghost essentially to the infinity circuit in the center of the craft world. So these ships are essentially, they're powered by ghosts. That's what's going on here, so that their ghosts can't be claimed by Slanesh. They're powering like these massive cities,
so
which is mad.
Bearing in mind your knowledge of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, how much is the Eldar stuff? How similar is it to Elven stuff?
I think the way they're so aloof and their senses, I mean, we're getting off structures a bit.
Yeah.
We'll do a full Eldar episode at some point. Now I've learned about it. But their senses are heightened. They're quicker. They're faster. They're better than humans. They're more emotional. They pick up on everything to a much higher extent. They live a lot longer. So that's a tick for the elf box. When they die, their spirits don't go straight to hell. So that's a tick for the elf box, because they go to the Undying Lands and they're kind of protected. So I think it is linked. There's definite parallels to the Tolkien world and elves as such. But it is mad to imagine like the difference between standing in the dome of the crystal seers, peering into the infinity circuit, surrounded by perfectly smooth wraithbone with heightened senses and emotion, trying to focus on a singular path so you're not swayed by chaos. Compared to being in the engine room on one of your like Mechanica ships, is just it's like a completely different universe. If you wanted to draw it, you'd have to use a completely different set of media. Do you know?
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? It's like you get on one of the elf ships and it's like, it's all lovely and white, and I don't even call them elves, Eldar ships, and it's all like beautiful and like everything's made like really intricately by like 5-star craftsmen with like inlays and all that kind of shit. You get on like a Mechanican ship and it's like leaking oil and everything's like fucking corrugated iron, and that's just the way they go, isn't it? That's the machine spirit, because they want the blood and guts of the machine spirit, and the elves are all like, let's power it with a ghost fart.
It is ghost fart power. It's a ghost fart engine powering a beautiful, beautiful structure.
Yeah.
But if I had to live on one, I think I'd pick one of these, I'll be honest.
Oh yeah, I'm getting on that ghost fart ship. It sounds great. Probably got a pool, like different services. Maybe on a holodeck, like on
Oh yeah, always wanted one of
Star
them.
Trek. Yeah.
So when I was looking at the AdMech, obviously being the builders, they're going to have lots of big stuff. That's what I assumed, and they didn't disappoint. I think I spoke about this in the AdMech episode, but I just wanted to have another shout out for the Forge World Lucius. Now, Lucius is perhaps like the Rock, so I'd like to get your opinions on it, on what you think, because Lucius is actually hollow. It's known as the Hollow Forge. It is a forge world. It's a very famous forge world. Lots of stuff comes from it, and it's one of the Imperium's super natura majoris is what they're called. I guess it's kind of like the wonders of the world, but in the Imperium. It's a unique jewel in the crown of the AdMech. It is literally hollow, so it's kind of like one of those Maltesers you get that hasn't got the inside in. I like getting them. Have you ever had one of them? A hollow Malteser.
Oh yeah, hollow Malteser is very
hollow Malteser. Yeah.
What's
oh
that?
no,
Yeah.
I like them. I've once had a whole packet that was hollow. It was really weird.
Really?
Yeah,
It's just chocolate beads.
yeah,
and you
just
were like, brilliant.
Yeah.
This is great. I love it.
But inside this forge world is a it's a grand experiment, and it should have destroyed the forge world many times, but it doesn't somehow through the technology control by the AdMech. In the center of the planet's core is an artificial sun. So it's literally the skin of a planet with a sun inside, which is a titanic fusion reactor that powers the Forge world. So way more impressive than a Eldar craft world. Brutal man technology. I haven't actually been able to read, and maybe it's purposefully vague as to whether it was actually built by man, but kind of like the Rock, I kind of feel like, is it still a planet? I mean, it still orbits in the same orbit, but to be hollow is quite interesting.
It's kind of similar to another one that I looked up, which was the Port Moore.
Yes.
Which is like a
artificial
hollowed out planetoid.
Where the fleet is moored in.
Yeah. And it's where Battlefleet Gothic is moored.
Yeah.
So which I didn't even realize was like a real lore thing. I thought it was just the name of the game, but the Battlefleet that looks after the Gothic sector is moored there. And that, I guess, is a similar thing. It's like a hollowed out planetoid. So it's like a planet-sized dockyard, essentially, is what we're saying for both of these structures, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I couldn't mention the AdMech and a man-made object and not mention the Ring of Iron.
Some say that when you pass from this world to the next, that you will in fact meet your maker. An interesting theory, but incorrect, for you need not look any further than Mars itself to meet the makers and their massive architectural wonder, a cathedral to their cult, literally in the heavens.
So the Ring of Iron is actually considered the largest known man-made structure in the Milky Way galaxy. So this is the biggest thing, and it's actually a massive complex of shipyards, construction facilities that orbit the equator of Mars. So where Mars is the thickest, its diameter is the greatest, it has a ring around the whole planet. So it's pretty big. And it's been built basically since the dawn of man's exploration and exploitation of space. So, i.e., it was started by Elon Musk and others.
SpaceX design.
Yeah. And by 30K, the expeditionary fleets of the Emperor are built there that go on to the Great Crusade. So the shipyards are very famous. Obviously, it's Mars, cradle of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and their own empire of Forge Worlds. It's the primary Forge World. Some would say it's the other head in the Aquila, symbol of mankind. During the Horus Heresy and the Schism of Mars, which is when most of Mars turned against the Emperor in the so-called Dark Mechanicum. The Dark Mechanicum struck out against the Ring of Iron, and it was severely damaged. But the terrible damage over the last 10,000 years has been subsequently repaired, rebuilt, and it still continues to grow in the present 40K setting.
And it's got like you can get the lift right from the surface of Mars to the Ring of Iron.
Yeah.
Because
So
the ring doesn't spin around Mars. It rotates at the same rate.
Yeah.
It's fixed.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a few. There's not just one. What are they called? Because it's a real in the Space Marine PlayStation game. You are fighting on one of those, a space elevator. It's a real scientific concept, although it would use so many materials to do it. But yeah, anyway, I think there's more than one going up to the ring. Yeah. And in 40K, a bit like Port Moore, Battlefleet Solar, which is the battle fleet that protects the solar system, is moored mostly around the Ring of Iron.
Nice.
So it's also a massive dockyard. Yeah, but yeah,
and
huge.
Very beneficial if you've had a spicy curry.
Yeah, giant cock ring.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're going to need that cock ring around Mars to do a bit of trade, right? I mean, you've got to do a bit of loose trade. Because they've got a lot of stuff to trade, obviously, Mars. Yeah. I mean, they must be making all sorts of stuff. There must be people coming in and out with that iron ring all the time. You need a ring of iron.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one other massive lump that's pretty near Mars in the solar system that I was reading about as well, that was known as Artifact 9 Kappa Mu. It's a geodesic sphere of black metal giving a minimalist look, which makes one look inside themselves to their honeycombed core, ready to be filled by life. And this is just a massive lump of rock that's been hollowed out and no one knows what it is. It's been floating around since like the dark age of technology, and it's in between Venus and Terra, but it's man-made. They just don't know who made it. Yeah, it's like a big geodesic, like dodecahedral like structure, similar to a kind of Blackstone fortress, I think, but it's just a big lump. And it's like ancient. It's like Stonehenge in space, right? No one knows where it's come from, but it just orbits between Venus and Earth. It orbits around the sun, but it can't be detected by anything other than sight and touch. So no like systems can pick it up. The Alpha Legion used it as a base during the Horus Heresy because it couldn't be seen.
Yeah, I was wondering where I'd heard it before.
Yeah, they were on it. And before Lorgar got told off for worshipping the Emperor as a god, he built like some sneaky shrines on this world, and then Sigismund went and ripped them all down. And when the Siege of Terra starts, this is where Ahriman goes and does like this big bit of sorcery, and it's that sorcery that allows the fleet to arrive through warp space like directly above Terra. Even though, like, he does this like big sorcery thing here. So in Horus Heresy,
this is an amazing piece of MacGuffin. Why would you not arm the fuck out of this place? Why would you not like just put like so many defenses? How does the Emperor not know
about this place?
Yeah.
But it's this like big, hollow, honeycombed, man-carved rock structure that's orbiting Earth, that's been used as a kind of ritual site for multiple chaos things in the past. And it's kind of cool that it's still there. It's now referred to as Artifact 9 Kappa Mu.
So it's still there in 40K?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's just this big old lump. The architects of which are unknown, which is always cool in 40K, I think, when something's completely unexplained.
I don't know why I keep talking about chocolate, but it's kind of making me think of a crunchy.
You need to have a chocolate bar, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking about secret places that don't exist on radars, maybe I can tell you guys a little something about the Panopticon.
That sounds like a wrestling thing or something.
So let me tell you a little bit about this place. This next space station is located in a desirable district of deep in the heart of system, only a stone's throw away from the glorious fauna of the district. Star magnificent, awe-inspiring. Can't wait to see it.
I didn't get most of that, mate.
Yeah, what?
I didn't. Oh, well, that might be because a lot of it's probably been redacted because the Panopticon, it's a very special place. So there's a maze of tightly floating space debris around a star system called the Saturnium. This maze is created by a mysterious space void at the center of the system. This void is very hard to detect on sensors and navigational devices, and is almost invisible to scanning equipment. In the 9th century of the 38th millennia, a mysterious mechanical vessel, coloured red and supposedly powered by skulls, entered the system and began an extensive survey of the area. As soon as they had started, they saw that whatever this star system was a very unique place and had a bizarre gravity that defied all logic. The red ship left, realizing it would not be possible for a single ship to properly scan the area. A century later, several of these red skull-powered ships arrived and began a complete scan of the area, charting and mapping it out slowly and methodically for unknown purposes. They found 3 planets with human life amongst the debris. It was determined that these worlds had fallen from the Emperor's lights and could never be inducted back into the Imperium. Too far gone were they. But rather than attempt to make contact, almost as soon as they came, the mysterious red craft vanished again. Strangely enough, at this time on Mars, the star system also started to become a topic of conversation, and plans for a star fleet specially built to explore the sector were devised. This was considered a strange move by most people because they had never even heard of this area, and for all extensive purposes it didn't exist on any maps or had been explored by any Imperium craft. But the fabricator general himself gave the order to proceed, much to the confusion of his advisors. The fleet suffered extensive damage in its time clearing the area, but eventually was helped by a mysterious artifact they found on their journey through the sector. This created a shield around the ships as they traversed the dangerous debris. Soon they were able to wipe out the Chaos Taint, and they built an enormous space station hidden in a secluded section of stable gravity amongst the bizarre star system. This space station was built from the iron bones of Mars itself and polished obsidian of the Istalian Yoland district asteroid belt. It was almost untrackable due to its strange location and was only accessible by the most skilled astropaths. This new space station became the headquarters for the Lord's Dragoon, a secret order of tech priests responsible for monitoring chaos corruption, a bit like the Mechanican Inquisition, if you will. And the space station became known as the Panopticon Space Station. This space station became used for secret research and weapons development. It was said that this space station recorded every conversation, viewed every camera and vox cast through every Imperial world, looking for heresy in its massive computer known as the Priacastica grid. A team of tech priests worked tirelessly on this grid, splashing it with holy oil and monitoring its every calculation, as it is so advanced that it's constantly on the verge of developing its own intelligence and becoming abominable intelligence.
Ah!
This is a spy ship. This is KGB stuff. This is
this is a proper spy ship. This is
dark.
This is from the Cult Mechanicum. Apparently, the leader of the Cult Mechanicums are these guys called the Lord Dragoons. But anyway, it is one of the most well-defended space stations in existence. If getting through its deadly debris that orbits the void wasn't hard enough, the surface is covered with colossal Titan-sized robots that sit like gargoyles, ready to activate and destroy anything that gets too close, as well as several experimental weapons never seen on the battlefield.
Sorry to interrupt, it's Professor Bumhead here, and I don't have much time. I just wanted to let you know that the Panopticon is a real idea developed by Jeremy Bentham, a philosopher in the 18th century. It was designed around Bentham's idea of pentroglossia, which is the theory that we all act different when we're being watched. And the Panopticon was a prison based on this idea, built in a donut shape with a central guard tower, so that all the cells could be being watched at any time. His idea was that as long as everybody thought that they might be being watched to some extent at any time, they would all behave much better. Bentham's ideas of pentroglossia were of course furthered in the modern day by the philosopher Foucault, who... Oh god, they're here!
Pack it in, Professor, we're trying to do a fucking Warhammer show here.
So yeah, I thought this was really cool. There's some KGB ass shit going on.
Putting the fascist in Imperium.
Yeah. If they needed some more of that. Hey guys, we're not fascist enough, you know. Maybe we should make a secret police.
Although
maybe we should tap everybody's information all the time.
It is quite interesting though, because I guess you could look at like the Inquisition and everything as being the Imperium of Man's, the Emperor's tool, but like this is like the AdMech version in a way. This is like the AdMech secret police.
Yeah.
Although obviously they're spying on everyone, but like, yeah, I mean,
they've
I'm
got to know
surprised
if
I hadn't
if
thought
they're
about
being
that
undermined,
before.
haven't they? Like,
Yeah.
there's still not complete trust between them.
Yeah.
No.
You know, that's
As
that's why there's a whole ordo of the Inquisition aimed at Mars, right?
Yeah.
Well, as far as I could tell, the Lord Dragoons are kind of like they're in it more for the machine spirit. So they're kind of like the Inquisition, but they've got their kind of own agenda, you know, not so much of the same as the Inquisition has. But
yeah.
I like that it's kind of hidden in a load of rubbish as well.
Yeah, it's just like they had to make
like
like special ships to get in there, and they were talking about like in some of the lore, they're talking about like how you have to like the only ways in are either to traverse through the space debris, which is really difficult, or do like a really specific warp jump. It's like trying to hit like a needle. It's like, you know, those guys that like uncork a beer with like a digger or something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of those. You've got to like really be like super duper good at what you're like. Yeah. Like some kind of like
that's a
credible
SpaceX thing, isn't it? Landing your rocket back down on a
yeah,
or blowing it up in mid space. You know, so.
It's a good point about like debris come up a bit now.
Oh yeah,
and there just must be so much space debris in.
Yeah,
I know you'd say that. Yeah, you must have seen that picture of Earth of all of the debris, and actually, it's so far apart that it's actually not as bad as it looks. But in 40K, there must just be so much crap in the solar system. But then maybe it all gets scavenged.
Well,
maybe it's not floating around.
All just becomes orc stuff.
Yeah, it does. It does generally become orc stuff. Yeah, but it
goes into a space hulk, one of those guys. You know, like you were saying before.
Now, now you mention space rubble. Did you guys know that a 7th Blackstone Fortress has just been found? It's just appeared and it's just been found.
I didn't know this.
Tell us more.
No, it's a seventh Blackstone Fortress known to exist has appeared in the furthest reaches of Segmentum Pacificus. It sits amid a graveyard of starship that stretches more than 1 million miles across.
What?
This is the latest Blackstone Fortress, is a key tactical asset for anyone who might suborn it to their will.
1 million miles across.
Yeah.
Is that the debris field? Or
that's the debris. The graveyard of starships.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's 1 million miles across. The Blackstone Fortress isn't that big. I mean, it's pretty big. Let me tell you.
Inside it, they're like TARDISes, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I will tell you about the Blackstone Fortresses because they are massive.
Many ships are made from adamantium. Some are even living things. Many contractors would balk at making anything out of unusual, exotic materials, let alone constructing gargantuan structures out of a barely understood material. Most of the typical tradesmen would go down the 4x2 route, but not the old ones, oh no. To turn Blackstone itself into a building, truly awe-inspiring.
They are actually massive alien constructed star forts, basically a warp-based strategic weapon employed by both the Imperium of Man and by the forces of chaos. Viewed from the top, the shape of an activated Blackstone Fortress has warped to resemble the 8-pointed star of Chaos Undivided, which is quite interesting.
Is that all of them? Do they all look like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was going to look it up. I'm pretty sure there was a model for one in Blackstone Fortress, but there are lots of images of them because they kind of don't really look like what you think they're going to look like. They look more of like a weird space station than you kind of might think they would look like, because while there's no sign can be found of those who constructed them, despite the exhaustive attempts and analysis by people like the AdMech, etc. No one can determine the nature of the super hardened onyx-like metals from which they're constructed, which is probably Blackstone. Okay. But there are some Imperial scholars who do believe that the Blackstone fortresses were constructed by the Old Ones during the war between the Old Ones and the Necrons.
Yeah, because that's what they're also the pylons, the Necron pylons
on Cadia
stuff, right?
And yeah. So supposedly the theory is that to capitalize on the Necrons and their Catan masters' vulnerability to warp-based attacks during the War in Heaven, which is the war between the Old Ones and the Necrons, the fortresses were equipped with a warp cannon that can create a devastating rip in the fabric of real space that would unleash an eruption of psychic energy from the warp powerful enough to destroy entire star systems. So it's like a mega
Yeah, I mean,
star
you're not
destroyer.
fucking around, if your gun literally is ripping
no, star
apart.
systems apart.
This
yeah.
isn't like it's not like Exterminatus where you're going to use really big bombs to blow up a planet. You're ripping space.
This puts the Death Star to shame.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's got to be one of the advantages of having a big ship, right? Is a really big gun. You don't want
really big gun,
yeah.
But interestingly, and there's quite a cool photo where someone's drawn this as a graphical representation. Something I didn't know is that the power of the fortresses can be combined. So the warp cannon can be linked with other Blackstone Fortress warp cannons. So if you imagine there's like a big let's just say it's like a big death ray coming out of this.
Telling me it's a goddamn Power Ranger. These fucking
Megazord
things are they going to combine together to become a goddamn Megazord?
They don't join together. It's like the death rays converge on each other and become more powerful.
Like
they shoot into something else that becomes goes into the chest crystal of some other guy who becomes a Megazord. I get you.
Yeah. But until very recently in the real world and in the lore of Warhammer 40k, there were only ever 6 Blackstone fortresses discovered in the early Imperial history in the 33rd millennium, scattered across the galaxy, seemingly ancient even at that time. They were dormant structures, so the Imperium could never turn them on, if you like. So what the Imperium of Man did is just build loads of shit on them because they're so big that they could use them as deep space naval bases. They build guns on top of them, so they were just using them for the sheer mass. And they'd have to be towed by other ships, would have to tow them around. It's only during the 12th Black Crusade, which is also called the Gothic War because it's where the Battlefleet Gothic fought, and I think that's the setting for the actual game that we were discussing earlier, Battlefleet Gothic game.
It said that in the Portmore stuff.
Okay, so this is like 7,000 years of them being dormant, that they actually started waking up, and that their hidden capabilities as weapons of mass destruction were made manifest, and that was because somehow Abaddon was able to wake them up. Basically, nobody knows how, but Abaddon's objective in the 12th Black Crusade, was to capture as many of the Blackstone fortresses as possible, and to at least stop the Imperium having as many as they did have. And by the end of the naval conflict, 2 of the fortresses were in the hands of the Black Legion, and at least 1 more was destroyed. So the Imperium was weakened greatly by that conflict. But more importantly, Abaddon could actually control the Blackstone fortresses, whereas the Imperium was still towing them around with lots of guns built on top of them. And obviously,
did he actually get full control then? Like he could decide where they flew, or could he just get inside?
No, they could warp jump and they could move around.
Oh, right.
And it's not really sure whether is their shape now as the 8-pointed Star of Chaos. Is that what it was? Is that what they were originally? We don't know. Have they changed? Have they changed shape over time? Because the 7th Blackstone Fortress, which is the setting for the tabletop game, it's the first Blackstone Fortress where the Citadel isn't inert. So the other ones, Abaddon had to wake up. The Imperium didn't know how to, but this one was never asleep, if you like. It's still active. It's still been awake, and it reacts to everything and everyone that goes inside it, and it reforms its inner shape, and it kind of, I don't know, it's like a living machine.
And that one, that 7th one, that's the setting for the box game, is in the Segmentum Pacificus, is it?
The furthest reaches. So on the
because that might come into play with all the new stuff, right? Because that's where the big Tyranid fight's going down. Maybe they'll actually link these things together.
Yeah,
I mean, it's in the same.
That would be good.
Space.
Yeah,
be cool.
yeah.
They're bringing all the MacGuffins together.
Yeah,
they won't actually do it though. It's just coincidence. They don't think
yeah,
pull together.
yeah.
They'll never
That's-
pull
Couldn't be
together
asked to
any
think of a
threads.
different star system, these lady fuckers.
Yeah, but who knows? I mean, it could be, yeah, because as we said before, it's like an interesting, with all of the stuff that they've written into that Blackstone Fortress, with all the hidden vaults and the people going in and finding all these other weird races and stuff. Yeah, it could be some weird link. Maybe, yeah, who knows? I mean, there's so many things. Maybe that's what the Tyranids are running away from, or I don't know. Who knows? But they're kind of weird. Yeah, nobody knows who made them, and obviously we all know what happened to one of them when it got thrown into Cadia as like an artificial meteor that cracked Cadia in half. If Games Watch do anything with it, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that seventh one. But who knows?
Dodging the rent, but the rent never stops.
I don't know about you guys, but I think that there's often something immensely satisfying about structures that employ like circles and spheres. Gives a kind of sense of completion, of no beginning, no end, just kind of infinite grace, you know?
Yeah.
And it made me think of the Kroot War Sphere. I don't know if you guys have seen these things, and they are a Blackstone Fortress model, but they look like yo-yos. So they've got like two hemispheres of balls on either side, and then a kind of tube in the middle. And it's the big Kroot ship, and they just look really cool. And they are like two hive cities, either side of a central spindle wheel. Almost like maybe like a Diablo disc or something like that, with like massive cities in there. And I just thought these were cool, A, because they're big, B, because they're built by the Kroot, and Kroot are excellent, and C, because the way that the Kroots learned how to build starships. So
yeah,
a massive orc fortress crashed on Petch, their homeworld, and they got the knowledge by eating the brains of the orc mech boys. So the Kroot destroyed the orcs that crashed on their homeworld, and then the Kroot ate the brains of the mech boys. And because Kroot gain knowledge by eating brains, they learned technology from the mech boys, but they could understand it better than the mech boys could, and that showed them how to build these massive like transport systems, which they now kind of shun a bit, the Kroot, because they've kind of gone back to basics. Now they're working for the Tau.
Oh, man.
But they have these like big, crazy like things. They know way more than you think. I just thought it was quite interesting to think of these Kroot ships.
Have they not managed to eat any better engineers at this point, though? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they should be secretly eating the Tau. I mean, that when you started talking about it, though, it kind of gave me, because when we did, I think it was the Tau episode where we spoke about I did a blast from the past on the Kroot Forge World range. But when you were talking about massive ship, like what if the new Xenos army was like a new Kroot army, where it's like a Kroot rebellion, where they have turned on the Tau and they have a whole new army range? I'd be well into that.
Oh, and they're all like buffed out crazy Kroot with like fucking crazy armor and shit. They're like, we ate a clever motherfucker finally, and now we all know how to make armor and shit.
They should be secretly eating Tau, like in a basement or something.
Yeah,
it's in one of the Caiaphas Cain novels where like he ends up there's like there's a planet he lands on and he's got to do something, and as with all the Cain novels, there's two warring factions and then a third faction comes up, and one of the factions that there is Kroot, and he ends up being like shown round by a Kroot, and he kind of walks around the corner and the Kroot's got round the corner behind him and is like wiping brains off of his lips. Kane's like, what are you doing? And the Kroot just starts speaking back to him in like perfect Gothic. It's like it's not acknowledged in the book, but to any reader it's like a real kind of wink like Kroot's just eating someone's brain. Like, notice, which is great. But they would be superpowered because apparently they navigate the warp. They have a natural ability to navigate in the warp. So this is a warp capable ship, but it doesn't need an Astronomicon. They can just go into the warp and navigate. They can feel their way around.
Oh shit! So they just know.
Yeah.
So
they can have like natural senses within the warp.
Are they hiding that from the Tau?
I reckon so. I reckon they got loads
Yeah.
of secrets from the town.
because the Tau don't use the warp
They
at all.
don't
They
use
just
the
shoot
warp,
around,
yeah.
do they?
So,
And then they
so
got
the
these
Tau
guys that are just
Empire-
like, oh, actually really good at just going through the warp, like just no one asked.
Someone's got to do some sort of story of like a Groot rebellion, because it's
Yeah.
the Tau Empire have got
I feel
warp
like these
capable
Tau are just leeching off
ships,
the
and
crew, to be honest with you. I think it's the wrong way around.
Yeah.
Oh, I
what
don't
if
think they've
that?
got very
down?
many of these. It said that there's only like a few of these like
right.
Groot war spheres that exist. The ones that were originally built by Peck. Maybe they've kind of forgotten how to build them, because they did kind of devolve in terms of technology.
Oh, that's it. You've got to keep eating brains each generation. You've got to keep eating a delicious engineer. Does your knowledge get passed down to your kid, or do they have to eat your brain? Do you know what I mean?
Maybe it's like a feasting session.
Yeah.
The funeral, it's an open coffin.
Yeah.
It's like,
and a
instead of
buffet at
cake.
the same time.
Yeah.
So another Xenos ship that's absolutely massive are these Necron world engines. And there's only a few that have been mentioned in the lore, but these are essentially Death Stars. And these are like straight up. I looked where all the lore from this comes from, and it's all 5th edition. So it's like when Necrons were fairly new, but it's like straight lifted Death Star. It's like a massive artificial planetoid thing with a huge Gauss laser that shoots out the front of it with multiple nodes joining together to form one giant beam. Like, it is a green Death Star.
Excellent.
Essentially, these Necron world engines. And the lore for it describes how it's an impenetrable void shields that, like, it took 15 Space Marine chapters to take down. This is when, like, the lore was so ridiculously over the top and epic that it was 15 different Space Marine chapters to bring this thing down, and anything they fired at it bounced off of the void shields. And the only way they could take it down was the Astral Knights just decided he'd had enough, and he flew his whole lead ship, like his whatever massive class ship it was, just directly at the planet sized thing. And it, because he had an adamantium point on the front of his ship, it managed somehow to pierce these impenetrable void shields. And 722 Astral Space Marines teleported into this Necron sphere and killed 20,000 Necrons.
Oh,
which is just utter bullshit in terms of like game power now. Where they were fighting right down to the last man. And then reading the like little snippet of lore for this in classic Warhammer lore fashion, only the leader was left at the end, number 772, who planted his last cache of melter bombs right in the center of the thing, and somehow that just caused it all blow up enough to knock out the shields, and the 15 surrounding chapters destroyed it. But what's cool is that inside this floating wreck of a Necron world ship, there's now a Imperial temple with 722 statues, each guarded by one representative from each of the chapters that fought in this massive war, which I thought was just really cheesy but cool. Like, there's like scavengers and people that like go and like take bits of metal and do scrap heap challenge, but right in the center of this thing there are still standing vigilant Space Marines remembering the 722.
Well, that's what they say, but they've probably starved to death by now. To be fair, they're just like sealed in the middle,
just forgotten about.
The pack of sandwiches is like dried up, you know.
And the other Necron world engine that was mentioned was one called Iori Delta Tove, which can just sometimes appears into reality and then disappears again. And when it appears, because it's the size of a planet, it just like wrecks gravity. And loads of earthquakes happen on planets around it, and then it disappears again. And the only chapter that's ever come to dealings with it is the Grey Knights, because they think it's somehow demonic. And then I started reading about how the Grey Knights tried to battle it. And would you believe some of them managed to teleport into it and plant some melter bombs at various points around it and blow out some of the control features. And then planted some melter bombs in the central core. But to this day, no one knows whether it exploded or whether it just disappeared again. into the warp.
I've said it before, and I'm going to repeat myself. But if you want to build a really impossible to destroy ship in 40k, you just have to make the floors half the size so Terminators can't walk around in them.
Yeah,
because then they can't.
Everyone has to bend down slightly.
Yeah.
Employ only people under 6 foot. And
You just
That's why Xenos Skaven would be so strong.
Yeah.
So that's the Necron world engines. They are just straight up Death Stars with some really cheesy old lore around them.
Is Voltan going to take over everything? They are that race. They're smaller than everything, surely. They are like.
That's true.
If you get on one of their spaceships, you're done, surely. Like everyone's crawling around. Like the only thing that can get there is like Termagants and Ripper Swords.
Ratlings. You need a load of ratlings.
Ratlings and that. And everyone knows they're too busy shagging or whatever. So.
Yeah.
It'd be a good diorama, wouldn't it, to have like a meeting table with a space marine just sat on the floor outside because he can't get in the door with like a really long optic cable, just like looking at the meeting table because he can't fit.
Space bulk. That's the problem.
So that's the biggest Necron ship I could find. Matt, I know you want to talk about the biggest Imperial one.
Biggest Imperial one. Yeah, you can keep your Necron ones. The biggest Imperial one, which is kind of like, it's the Imperial Death Star, is the Phalanx.
When the great builders of our ancient past, Roman, Norman, Wren, constructed the great cathedrals, I very much doubt that they would have thought that one day somebody would be mad enough to take their design cues and combine it with an enormous warp drive engine.
It's the largest starship known to have been constructed by human hands, essentially a hive city in space. It's the mobile fortress monastery of the Imperial Fist's Space Marine chapter and previously the Legion. And it was constructed many millennia ago, probably during the dark age of technology before the Imperium. Its foredeck, apparently, can dock a dozen Imperial Navy cruisers around its circumference, and it wields the firepower of a formidable fleet. It's the only vessel that's built by mankind that comes close to the size and apparently the complexity of the Eldar craft worlds. So there we go.
Take that, Eldar.
Yeah, take that. It's so large it reflects light like the stars themselves. So during the Horus Heresy and the Great Crusade, it came to be a symbolic representation of the Emperor above Terra. And it's completely mobile, capable of going through the warp, which allows the Imperial Fists to move around the galaxy. The secrets of its construction are long, long forgotten, though it is known that the Primarch Rogaldorn brought it into the Emperor's service at the time of their first meeting, which is interesting, and it's performed proudly for the Imperium ever since. In the days of the Great Crusade, and since then, its shadow falls across planets that are soon to be attacked by the Imperial Fists. So it's kind of like their early warning, or like a warning to planets that they're coming to destroy. The Death Star does that in Star Wars, I think, doesn't it? Like there's a shadow of it. Anyway. You can see it in the sky.
Let's stop talking about the Death Star, surely. Forget about the Death Star.
The Phalanx is way much better. But since the Horus Heresy, sort of generally, it's just been circling around the Sol system. Its orbit synchronicitous with that of Sacred Terra, and it's basically one of Terra's only or main defenses now in 40k. It wasn't that way in 30k, but by the time of 40k, it's like it's Terra's primary defense in orbit of Terra. It is starting to show its age, so people kind of, it's like the Imperium itself. It's kind of a bit run down. Nobody really knows how it works, but somehow they're still making it work. As we spoke about in a previous episode with the Space Marines that appear out of nowhere, what are they called? With skulls on.
Legion of Damned.
The Legion, yeah. We spoke about the Phalanx and the Legion of Damned because it did a warp jump to Cadia, and it actually knocked out the Blackstone Fortress that Abaddon had in his fleet, and that's why Abaddon ends up throwing the Blackstone Fortress literally into Cadia because the Phalanx has disabled the Blackstone Fortress. So the Phalanx is still a powerful piece of kit if it's able to do that.
Especially when it's full of like Ghost Riders.
Especially,
that's what happens, right? They just suddenly appear and tell it that it needs to warp jump to Cadia.
Yeah, that's right. Well remembered. Yeah. And I was reading about some of the areas in the Phalanx, and I picked out 2 areas that were quite interesting. The Strategium, which we can all guess what that is. It's the command bridge, but not only of the Phalanx, it's the headquarters of the Imperial Fist's chapter fleet. And this is the place that contains the Hand of Dawn. So the lore around this
jacked off by the Primarch.
Oh my god! Can you imagine if they do that? Yeah.
This poet, you know when you go and see like lucky statues and they're really smooth on like the nose where someone's rubbed it. It's like a really smooth hole.
No, what?
Hand of Dawn.
He's just got like a there's just like it's just a grubby room with a power fist in the shape of like a jack off.
Yeah. Or maybe there was the whole body and now it's just his fist left because it's all been rubbed out. But yeah.
He jacked off so much his whole body disappeared. Now he's a hand.
So it's a very sacred place to the chapter. And the other place that I thought was quite interesting was the Scriptum Ascender, which is an archive of the Imperial Fists. So it's a big library, and it contains many commentaries by Rogel Dawn, the Primarch himself, on the events of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. And the texts are said to be shockingly blunt and matter of fact, so very much like Rogel Dawn. Unfortunately, the archive has been heavily damaged. It was heavily damaged in the fight over Cadia. And today, in the 41st, or is it the 42nd millennium, the writings by Rogel Dawn that were original great military schemes and predictions of the future are now reduced to garbled prophecy. So I can imagine that soon the Imperial Fists chapter will be reading this stuff and following sage advice by Rogel Dawn that is actually just a load of gobbledygook. So that might be interesting to see where they.
It's interesting that they're bringing that in because there's some revelations I won't spoil now about Dawn in the Siege of Terra.
Okay.
He's gone down a dodgy path, shall we say, at this point in the Siege of Terra, but we don't know the outcome yet.
He's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions.
Well, Matt, that's all well and good, right? But sometimes
I mean, I don't know. The Phalanx has got to be the biggest, bestest thing, isn't it?
Well, sometimes I think architecture needs to be more than aesthetics, more than engineering marvels. Sometimes it's about emotion. It's about getting the job done. It's about wah, and that is the attack move. This is some orky shit right here, and I think it would just destroy the Phalanx were it to be able to appear at the right place. So this is essentially another hollowed out planet, but this one's orky. It's hollowed out and it's had a massive face built on the front, and this was the Beast's ship. And when the Beast spoke through his like intercom, the entire face of the planet somehow moved as if like the planet was speaking. It's like this orc glyph welded to the front of it. And it spends most of its time in subspace, which isn't described, but it's somewhere between the warp and real space. So Webway-esque. And it causes this massive gravitational destruction. It just appears in like this massive green flash into real space, and it's so big that it has just made planets split in half where it appears. But it needs to recharge, so it's kind of powered by orc psychic energy, this whole thing. And when it arrives, it will just destroy planets, and it will eat all of the shattered remains of the planets.
Literally eat it, Pac-Man style. Its mouth opens up and takes bites out of the planet until the planet is gone.
These planets and all
that
of this
is
scrap.
awesome.
And some of it is like, it's obviously when it goes inside the thing, it's picked up by orcs and like bolted onto other places. But it now acts as what the orcs call a war gate, which is essentially a webway gate. So where this thing appears, it's just a portal where massive orc fleets can just fly out of it. so essentially the orcs, because of their mental psychic connection and emotion, have somehow managed to take this big scrap heap of junk, make it appear in real space where they fancy having a battle, and then from it just magic up endless fleets of orcs to fly out of it until space becomes so unstable that it disappears back to the subspace realm from whence it came. And I think it's just wonderfully orky that there's this planet-sized thing that can just appear, destroy a planet, and disappear again, leaving behind a huge orc fleet that doesn't know where it is or how it got there. It's just happy to be having a scrap.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. I mean, I feel like we might have talked about this thing before.
I think we have. Yeah, I'm trying to.
It does also feel. Yeah. I mean, it really does feel like, again, we've probably talked about it, but if the orcs had the organization of Space Marines, they could totally just take over the universe. They've literally got a planet that can appear anywhere and just eat a planet and then just shoot out a bunch of random orcs. But they're, like you say, they're all so confused. They just get shit out and are just like, go on, let's go somewhere. There's no, there's no central grid telling them what to do or nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And its main weapon is called a gravitic whip, and they don't know how it works either. But essentially, it's like a whip of gravity. So, like when you, I don't know, when you like flip a skipping rope, it's like that, but with gravity. So, like everything after it's just like ripped to shreds. It's just like, I think it's mental. And the other thing I like about it is I think of a lot of the lore about this thing is actually written by Dan Abnett. It's in Iron Slaughter, and it's just such a non-Abnett-y thing. I think to have the man who's so good at like small scale emotion and putting feeling and depth into stuff to be writing about her. It's like he's just let his imagination run wild, and I think it's great.
Yeah,
that is very cool. I mean, that is proper like super villain-esque. It's like I built a skull on a planet and it eats other planets. It's awesome.
And the skull speaks when I do.
That's the
that is perfect.
I wanted to shout out a couple of other Imperial ones. There's I think we've mentioned these quite recently. The Raptorus Rex, which is the mobile star fortress of the Firehawks Space Marine chapter, or it was. Now it's lost in the warp. And that's kind of second only to the Phalanx. So it's like the second largest mobile space station, fortress monastery of the Imperium. And another thing was the Galatan, or it's just called Galatan, which is a star fort that is in the realm of Ultramar. It's the largest of the star forts in Ultramar. It's said to be 100 kilometers in length, that has shipyards to rival the moon, Luna, and its weaponry is said to be equal to a sector battle fleet. It has lots of hundreds of Space Marines and thousands of Ultramar Auxilia on. So, apparently it's where the Nova Marines chapter are based, which is cool.
It played a massive part in the Plague Wars, didn't it, in 8th edition, I think, when they
with Gilliman
Marines were fighting.
Yeah, because they nearly took it. Yeah, they had a big battle over it.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. The Space Wolves have got one too. I think it's called Mjolnir and Gormjal. They've got like two that float next to each other. They always go around in pairs.
I did kind of think like, what's the biggest man-made object in the galaxy? That was kind of what I was going in to try and find. And obviously we found that it's the Ring of Iron, but really I think it's the Emperor's ego. That's the largest man-made thing in the galaxy.
Cool.
Burn!
There was some other,
sick burn, Emperor. Take that.
There's some other off-kilter things as well that I saw. One was like, there's a Chaos Space Marine platform that's like is like 1 million miles across, but it exists in some part of the warp where like reality is warped around a curve, so it actually only takes up like the space of your lounge, but it's massive.
Well, there must be. I mean, I guess we could say we talked about Kimura before, but in some ways that's kind of like a massive space station.
Yes. Say the webway if you were going off topic. Was built by something. There were some things I was reading that said the orbital array. You know, the Necron map of the galaxy. So they have this map of the whole galaxy.
But the thing that Cool reads.
When they do something in the orbital array, if they like delete something from the orbital array, it can be deleted like in reality at the same time. But no one like really knows how this orbital array system works. But there were people online when I was looking at saying like, what's the biggest thing, that was saying, well, maybe it's actually the orbital array because somehow it extends into all of space.
I know at the beginning I mentioned a lot of starships, but I mean, really, I think there must be a lot of hive cities in the Imperium that are larger than those big starships. Some of the hive cities in the Imperium are absolutely enormous, as we've spoken about in our hive city episode. They go up as much as they go down. So the stuff that you see, the drawings that you see of them, double it. You know, they're enormous.
That's almost kind of like what you were saying about the asteroid, where eventually the thing the hive city is built on kind of becomes dwarfed by the thing that's built on it in a way, or whatever.
Yeah.
I reckon the biggest thing by like surface area has got to be the Ring of Iron. In terms of all the
just for the size of it.
By the Imperium.
Yeah.
The Imperium don't have anything that's planet sized like the Orcs and the Necrons do. I mean, that has got to be the biggest thing, because it's planet sized.
But if you're talking about materials used to build it or something, then maybe not, because it's just the kind of a Ring of Iron as opposed to the phalanx, which might be, it's like when they say, if you get all the veins in your body and put them back to back, it could go around the world two times or whatever.
You're right.
So who knows?
Basically, we haven't worked out what the biggest thing is, and we're sorry.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Just like one of those episodes of Grand Designs where the guy ran out of budget halfway and then never really finished his house, we wandered from the point of this episode and never got to the bottom of what was the biggest structure in all of the Imperium. But if there's one thing we did learn, is that humanity has always strived for and will continue to strive for building and architectural dominance. Whether it be over your neighbour Greg, by building a sick-ass extension out of shipping containers or some bullshit, or building a massive phallic spaceship to show the rest of the universe just how cool and manly you are. And that your home is not just a castle that needs to be defended, but also a really good opportunity to show off to the people around you. So let's round off this episode safe in the knowledge that the insane vanity projects that exist in our time will exist tenfold in the year 40,000.
Broke boys don't deserve no pussy. I know that's right.
So you know what time it is? Lords of Lore quiz. I pit Matt and Welsh against each other in a quiz to find out who is the Lord of Lore. And are you guys ready for a doozy of a quiz?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because let me tell you, I've been online recently. I just got the internet, and let me tell you, there's loads of stuff on there. One thing that I discovered, that is a Tau dictionary. So I've been reading through the dictionary of the Tau, and I've come up with a game called, is it a Tau word or is it a Pokemon?
Okay.
I'm gonna say a word, and you guys need to guess if it's Tau or if it's Pokemon. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the first word is Conkeldurr.
I think it's.
Does it have an apostrophe?
No, there's no abbreviation
Pokemon
in this. Okay. All right.
I was gonna say Tau.
Okay. Well, Welshie, you're right. It was a Pokemon. Okay, so second word. I'm pretty sure this is EI.
That's a Pokemon.
That's a Tau, because I can hear you pause at the apostrophe.
It's no apostrophe in it. That's just me being shit at Reedy, but still, Welshie, you're correct. It's a Tau word that means the fourth in command of an army. Are you guys ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Beegel.
That is a Pokemon.
That's a Pokemon.
You're both wrong. It's the Tau word for orc.
You're such a BGL.
Yeah.
Is it B apostrophe gel?
There's no abbreviation. It's just Beegel.
Okay.
But I assume, but my Tau pronunciation might be a bit off, to be honest with you. But so is my Pokemon pronunciation. So I'm hoping that it all comes together. All right, this one's a doozy. Rattle.
Pokemon.
Rattle. No, it's Ratty, Ratata, I believe, for Pokemon. I'm going to go with Tau.
Well, she steaming away with it. Tau for teacher. The next one is Stat-Ataka. Stat-Ataka.
That's a Pokemon.
I'm going to go Tau for that as well.
Matt, coming in with your first point. That's a Pokemon. Okay, well, let's make this the last question, shall we? This is okay, and this one I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to give you three names. Okay, two of them are Tau and one is a Pokemon, and I want you to guess which one is the Pokemon. Okay.
Okay.
And this is the last question, so it's worth 10 billion quadrillion points. Okay. First name Dark Strider. Second name Dark Pulse. Third name Dark Star. Which is the Pokemon out of those three?
Dark Pulse.
What was A?
A was Dark Strider.
I'll go with that.
Well, you've taken it away.
Yes.
It was Dark Pulse.
Dark
You
Strider
know your Pokemon from your Tau.
He's the scout leader in the Tau army. That one was
and that reveals the true nature of this.
Yeah, look at that.
This happened again.
The Inquisition has discovered you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I've been your host, Stoney. Say goodbye, everybody.
That's no move.